The call came in at 7:45 p.m. A man's voice, trembling, breathless, choked by something deeper than fear. A long pause. Then words that would set off a chain of events no one could have ever imagined. I think she's dead. She's not breathing. The line crackled. Dispatch tried to keep him talking, but his words were scattered, hollow. His breaths came in short, uneven bursts, like someone struggling to keep control. Cut to a photograph. A bride and groom, standing at the altar, eyes locked, smiles frozen in time. Judge Michael Carter and Pastor Evelyn Carter, a power couple, respected, admired. Two lives intertwined by love, by faith, by the promise of forever. 48 hours. That's all they had. 48 hours from "I do" to a crime scene. The air was thick with silence when officers arrived at the couple's home. The kind of silence that presses against the walls, that lingers, waiting to be broken. And then, a single sound. The soft clink of ice against glass. Michael Carter sat in the dim light of the living room, a glass of whiskey resting in his hand. He didn't look up when the officers stepped inside. He didn't flinch when they called his name. Instead, he lifted the glass to his lips, took a slow sip, and set it down with deliberate precision. And then, in a voice as steady as the gavel he once held in court, he spoke. I did what I had to do. 2 days earlier, guests had gathered in a grand church, their laughter echoing against stained glass windows. The scent of fresh roses filled the air, a choir sang in perfect harmony, and the bride walked down the aisle, radiant. No one questioned whether she was happy. No one asked if she was afraid. If they had, would she have told them the truth? Because something was wrong. Text messages left unanswered. Calls that went straight to voicemail. And then, one final message to her best friend just hours before she died. I don't feel safe. What happened inside that house between the vows and the violence? What could push a man from love to murder in a matter of hours? And the most disturbing question of all, was this really about what he claimed? Or was that just the excuse of a man who had planned this all along? This is the story of Michael and Evelyn Carter. A marriage that ended before it even began. A case that shocked the nation. And a motive so disturbing that even the most seasoned detective struggled to believe it. Stay with me as we uncover the truth behind this tragic case. Judge Michael Carter had spent years building a reputation as one of Atlanta's most formidable legal minds. Colleagues described him as meticulous, disciplined, and unwavering in his pursuit of justice. His rulings were sharp, his presence in the courtroom commanding. Few dared to cross him, and even fewer could claim to know the man behind the robe. Pastor Evelyn Carter was a beacon of hope in her community. Her sermons filled the pews of Grace Baptist Church every Sunday, and her outreach programs provided aid to countless women in need. She preached of love, redemption, and second chances. To those who followed her ministry, she was more than a pastor, she was a voice of guidance, a symbol of unwavering faith. Their worlds collided in 2022 through a church legal aid program, a bridge between the law and faith. Evelyn sought legal assistance for a woman in an abusive marriage, and Michael had volunteered to provide counsel. Their professional discussions turned into late-night conversations. Conversations turned into dinner dates. By late 2023, they were engaged, their love story seemingly destined. March 8, 2024. The wedding was a grand affair. Grace Baptist Church was adorned in elegant white roses and golden drapery. The guest list read like a who's who of Atlanta's elite, judges, politicians, high-profile attorneys, and leading clergy members. Family and friends watched as Michael and Evelyn exchanged vows beneath a towering stained-glass window. A moment of perfection. A union blessed in the eyes of God and the law. Laughter and applause filled the air at the reception. Friends toasted to a lifetime of happiness, calling them a power couple, a force of change. Cameras flashed, capturing smiles that would soon become haunting relics of a doomed marriage. After the wedding, the couple settled into their newly purchased home in Buckhead, one of Atlanta's most exclusive neighborhoods. It was a home fit for a judge and a pastor, sprawling, elegant, and secured behind wrought iron gates. But what happened within those walls over the next 48 hours would turn that dream into a nightmare. The first night as husband and wife should have been one of joy. Instead, Evelyn felt an icy distance. Michael barely touched her. His kisses lacked warmth. The man she had married seemed preoccupied, his gaze distant. She tried to brush it off, telling herself it was just exhaustion from the long day. But doubt gnawed at her. March 9, 2024, 10:17 p.m. Evelyn sent a message to her best friend, Cynthia Mitchell. A simple text, but one that would later send shivers down Cynthia's spine. Something feels off. He's not who I thought he was. Cynthia responded immediately, asking what she meant. But Evelyn never replied. The next day, she would be dead. March 10, 2024, 7:45 p.m. A frantic 911 call shattered the quiet of the upscale neighborhood. Judge Michael Carter's voice trembled as he spoke to the dispatcher. I think she's dead. She's not breathing. Police rushed to the scene, sirens slicing through the evening air. What they found inside the Carter home was a scene so shocking, so grotesque, that even the most seasoned officers hesitated before stepping inside. Evelyn Carter lay motionless in the master bedroom. The air was thick with an acrid, metallic scent. Her skin was pale, her body unnaturally still. The coroner would later confirm what officers already suspected: she had been dead for hours before the call was made. But the question that haunted detectives wasn't just how she died. It was why. The reason, once revealed, would leave the entire nation in disbelief. The evening was quiet in Buckhead, one of Atlanta's most prestigious neighborhoods. The streetlights cast a dim glow on the Carter residence, an elegant two-story home that had, just days ago, been the site of a celebration. Now, it was the backdrop of an unfolding nightmare. Evelyn's best friend, Tasha Reynolds, had an uneasy feeling all day. Her texts to Evelyn had gone unanswered, and her calls went straight to voicemail. It wasn't like Evelyn to ignore her. Concerned, Tasha decided to drive over. She pulled into the driveway, noting that Michael's car was parked out front. She knocked. No answer. She knocked again, harder. Still, silence. Peering through the large front window, she saw Michael sitting in the dimly lit living room, his gaze fixed on something unseen. He was holding a glass of whiskey, his face emotionless, his posture unnervingly still. Her heart pounded. Something was wrong. She banged on the door. Finally, Michael stood, walked over, and opened it. His voice was eerily calm. "You shouldn't be here, Tasha." Ignoring him, she pushed past and ran up the stairs. The bedroom door was ajar. What she saw inside made her let out a blood-curdling scream. Evelyn was lying on the bed, motionless. Her arms were spread out, her eyes open but lifeless. Bruises lined her neck, dark and telling. The silk sheets beneath her were rumpled, as if there had been a struggle. The room smelled faintly of perfume, mixed with something else, something metallic, something unnatural. Tasha's screams alerted a neighbor, who called 911. Within minutes, sirens wailed through the night as police swarmed the house. Cause of death: strangulation. The coroner would later confirm that Evelyn had fought back. Defensive wounds on her arms and a broken fingernail embedded with Michael's skin were chilling evidence that she had tried to resist. But she had lost. When officers entered the home, they expected chaos. Instead, they found Michael sitting back in his chair, watching them with unreadable eyes. His whiskey glass was still in his hand, nearly empty. An officer approached. "Sir, can you tell us what happened here?" Michael's lips curled slightly. "I did what I had to do. No panic. No remorse. Just a chilling acceptance." Initial police theories. A crime of passion. A heated argument that turned deadly. Had the pressures of marriage revealed a side of Michael no one had seen before? Or was it premeditated? Detectives began reconstructing the hours leading up to Evelyn's death. Security cameras showed no forced entry. There were no signs of burglary. Nothing was stolen. The only two people in the house that night were Evelyn and Michael. During police interviews, Michael was disturbingly candid. He leaned back in his chair, crossed his arms, and uttered a sentence that left officers stunned. "She smelled bad. It disgusted me." The room fell silent. The lead detective, Detective Ryan Caldwell, exchanged glances with his partner. Surely, they had misheard him. "What do you mean by that, Judge Carter?" Caldwell pressed. Michael tilted his head. "You heard me. Investigators dig deeper." Was this really about hygiene? No one who knew Evelyn had ever mentioned anything remotely close to what Michael was implying. Friends described her as meticulous, always well-groomed. A woman who prided herself on her appearance. As investigators dug deeper, a darker pattern emerged. Michael had a history of control. Past relationships, which had been hidden from the public eye due to his judicial status, revealed disturbing claims. Ex-girlfriends spoke of his obsessive need for perfection. His need to dictate everything, from what they wore, to how they walked, to how they presented themselves in public. One ex, who wished to remain anonymous, described an incident eerily similar. "He once told me I had to shower twice before bed. If I didn't, he wouldn't let me sleep next to him. He would insult me, tell me I was disgusting. It made me paranoid. I started showering obsessively just to keep him from looking at me like I was dirty." Had Evelyn unknowingly triggered the same reaction? Had she been subjected to the same cruel scrutiny? More than that, was her death the result of an obsession that had spiraled out of control? Neighbors recalled hearing muffled shouting the night of her death. One even reported hearing something that, in hindsight, chilled them to the bone. A single, desperate plea. "Michael, please." Followed by silence. The final days of Evelyn Carter's life were documented in haunting detail within the pages of her journal, found tucked away in her nightstand beneath a stack of devotionals. The leather-bound book, filled with neat cursive writing, revealed what she never told anyone, her growing fear of the man she had just married. Investigators pored over the entries, tracing back to the weeks before the wedding. The excitement of being a bride quickly turned to unease as she documented Michael's mood swings, his rigid expectations, and his cruel remarks disguised as humor. But the final entry, dated March 9, 2024, just one day before she died, was the most chilling. "I feel trapped. I made a mistake. God help me." Detectives now had a window into the growing tension between the couple. But one major question remained: was Michael Carter's claim about hygiene truly the motive? Or was it something much more insidious? As the investigation continued, authorities uncovered a disturbing pattern in Michael Carter's past. His ex-girlfriend, Lisa Freeman, was among the first to come forward publicly. "He controlled everything, what I wore, how I spoke, how I acted in public. And when I didn't listen, he had ways of making me regret it." Lisa revealed that Michael had been accused of domestic violence once before. In 2016, an ex-fiancé had filed a report detailing his explosive temper. She alleged that he once grabbed her by the throat during an argument, leaving bruises. But when it came time to testify, she backed out. The case was dismissed. When police confronted Michael with this information, his response was eerily detached. "They were weak. They didn't understand me." The prosecution now had a theory: Michael Carter wasn't driven to murder by a sudden wave of disgust. He was a man who had spent years perfecting control over the women in his life. And when Evelyn didn't meet his impossible standards, she became his next victim. Then came the biggest break in the case: Michael Carter's internet history. Detectives retrieved data from his laptop, and what they found painted a disturbing picture of premeditation. On the morning of March 10, just hours before Evelyn was found dead, he had searched. How long does it take to strangle someone? Can strangulation be accidental? What happens when someone loses oxygen for 10 minutes? And then, just minutes before making the 911 call. Legal consequences of killing a spouse. This was no crime of passion. This was calculated. Security cameras from a neighbor's house captured a crucial moment that contradicted Michael's timeline. At 7:12 p.m., Michael was seen taking out a large garbage bag. Inside, investigators later discovered a torn bedsheet and a pair of latex gloves. Why dispose of evidence if it was an accident? The pieces were falling into place, but there was one more voice that needed to be heard: Evelyn's sister, Brianna. Her testimony would shake the courtroom to its core. The courtroom was packed on the first day of the state of Georgia versus Michael Carter. Reporters lined the back rows, cameras clicking as the once revered judge took his seat at the defendant's table. His hands were folded neatly, his suit crisp, his expression unreadable. For weeks, the trial captivated the nation. How could a man with such legal expertise, one who had sent criminals away for life, be on the other side of justice? The prosecution wasted no time painting Michael Carter as a cold, calculating killer. This was not a crime of passion, the district attorney told the jury. This was premeditated. This was a man who saw his wife as an object. And when that object failed to meet his standards, he eliminated her. They laid out their strongest evidence, the chilling internet searches, the disposed of evidence, and most damning of all, Evelyn's journal. Page after page of her words documented the slow erosion of their relationship, the suffocating control Michael exerted over her life. Her best friend, Tasha Reynolds, took the stand in tears. She told me she wasn't happy. She said she felt like she didn't know him anymore. Then came the testimony of Michael's ex-girlfriend, Lisa Freeman, who described his history of control and intimidation. He was charming at first, she admitted. But the moment I didn't do something his way, the mask came off. The courtroom was silent as she described the night he had grabbed her by the throat and whispered, "If you ever try to leave me, I'll make sure no one finds you." That was 6 years before Evelyn's murder. Michael's legal team had an uphill battle. They knew the evidence against him was overwhelming. Their only hope was convincing the jury that this wasn't premeditation, it was a mental break. They argued that Michael had experienced a psychotic episode, a lapse in sanity triggered by an undiagnosed personality disorder. "My client was under immense stress," his lead attorney pleaded. He snapped. "He is not a monster, he is a man who lost control." They even tried to use Evelyn's hygiene as an argument, claiming Michael had obsessive-compulsive tendencies that made him irrationally fixate on cleanliness. It was a desperate move. And the jury wasn't buying it. After 2 days of deliberation, the jury returned with their decision. Guilty. First-degree murder. When the judge handed down the sentence, life in prison without the possibility of parole, Michael Carter showed no emotion. No remorse. He simply nodded, as if accepting a ruling he had once delivered to so many others. The case sent shockwaves through the nation. How had a respected judge, a man entrusted with upholding the law, become a killer? Evelyn's congregation held candlelight vigils in her honor, her church filling with mourners who spoke of her kindness and unwavering faith. The media dubbed the case, "the judge who passed his own sentence." But for Evelyn's family, the headlines didn't matter. They had lost a daughter, a sister, a friend. Her sister, Brianna, spoke to the press outside the courthouse. "I want people to understand something," she said, her voice shaking. "Abuse doesn't always start with bruises. It starts with control. It starts with fear. My sister deserved better. And if her story can save just one woman, then she didn't die in vain." The case of Michael and Evelyn Carter was a grim reminder that abuse doesn't always look the way we expect. It can be silent, hidden behind closed doors, concealed by wealth and status. Evelyn's last journal entry still lingers in the minds of many. I feel trapped. I made a mistake. God help me. Perhaps she knew what was coming. Perhaps, deep down, she knew that the man she had just married would be the one to take her life. This case leaves us with more questions than answers. Was Michael Carter truly repulsed by his wife's hygiene, or was that just an excuse, a chilling cover for something much darker? Was this a man consumed by control, willing to take a life the moment his illusion of perfection was shattered? Or was there something else, something we'll never fully understand? What do you think? Was justice truly served with a life sentence? Or did he deserve something even harsher? Have you ever heard of a case this bizarre before? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I want to hear your theories. And if you want more deep dive true crime stories like this one, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Because in the world of crime, the truth is always stranger than fiction.